Hello, and welcome to this episode of Demystified as we explore home cooking in a modern world. Hello, I'm Linda, and I'm here with my friend Paul. Hey, Paul.
We're back.
It's been a long time, hasn't it?
Well, we're sort of back. We're
not
semi-legally back, I suppose.
Well, we are back.
We're back.
For now.
Yeah.
And in Melbourne, here we are nearly out of our world's longest lockdown.
Woo!
Congratulations. Gold standard. Go us.
Go us. We're so good.
Oh, dear.
And just a casual 2,000 cases today or something.
Yeah, we won't talk about that. It's all a bit depressing, but how have you been?
Good. Oh, I mean, I'm happy to be back. It's much nicer to be back. Got some new toys.
Well, there's been a few deliveries here, yes.
Get some cooking done. Get some more stuff done for cooking with steam. So, yeah, now we've sort of, I suppose got over the major hurdle of this, whatever this thing is. We've got some distance sorted and all that sort of stuff. I can come back in and start doing some things. So, that's good.
Do you want to talk about the deliveries you had?
No.
Okay, then.
Not just yet.
Alrighty.
I mean, some smart cookware, a new version of the coffee steamer, and some other bits and pieces. So.
Some of that smart cookware, it's an interesting progression, I think, in general, in terms of how we use our other devices to help us with cooking. And that's something that you and I have talked about off air a lot, about these sort of, the screens, like our oven has two old-fashioned dials, and I like it like that. But I do know that the modern world is moving towards, more integration and being able to use your phone or your iPhone or iPad, tablet to integrate, which I find an interesting concept.
Well, I mean, it's
in general
where everything's going. The only thing, I think there's a fine balance. I think the only thing you need to be aware of is that I don't want to get caught up in a situation where you take away the tactile nature of cooking and the fact that you use all your senses. So you relying on a machine to tell me when my eggs are done or when my chicken is right to turn over or whatever it is. Like, maybe it's the traditionalist in me, but I'm not anti-technology. But I think it's got to be done with a certain amount of refinement, because like we were playing with the oven I got before, and the first thing you asked me when you saw the recipes was, well, that kind of looks annoying. Does that get sent to your phone? And for the time being, no, it probably doesn't. In the future, yes, it will. But then we played around just for 5 minutes before with the smart cookware, and all the information was on your phone. But that didn't seem a convenient sort of use. Yeah. So it's very hard to, if you look at those two examples, and they're just two pieces of cookware essentially, one's built into the oven that you're working on, and you've got all the information there, and you can swipe and scroll and do whatever you want, and one's built into your phone, but they're both, to a degree, yes, both convenient, but also both inconvenient, because it was a 6 or 7 touch process to get some eggs frying with the smart cookware.
Exactly.
So for people that are starting out for cooking, first time at home or whatever, who knows? It probably suits some people, but I don't think it'll make people better cooks. That's my issue with it. Because the stuff on the oven is a built-in recipe that's been tried and tested, so it's like a cookbook, right? But you still need to follow a certain method and technique to get to that. So it's not walking you through that. It's giving you ingredients. It's giving you a method to follow, and you follow it step by step. Whereas the smart cookware stuff that we're looking at is, it's showing you every single small, nuanced step. Crack your eggs into a separate bowl. Pour them in right now. Press next.
It was quite tricky, and it was 6 steps just to get the
eggs cooking.
The eggs into the pan.
Yeah.
And
correct.
By then I'd given up looking at it.
Yeah, you were bored.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a funny one.
It is, but it is. You're right. It's on all the devices we're looking at and the software that we're looking at. It is something that.
But you see, when I look at having the ability to turn my air conditioner on before I get home on a hot day, love it.
Totally.
And that's an appliance in your house. You know,
absolutely.
like being able, I think it's applicable for things like laundry and dishwashing and stuff like that. Like you can have your dishwasher go on when you're not at home.
Yeah, exactly. Particularly with solar power, you can
set your washing machine up.
Solar power and see when you're at capacity and take best use of it. Yeah, absolutely.
And same with your fridge when it's in, when you know you're sleeping overnight, you can set it to a low energy mode or whatever. Like, I think, but for cooking, it's a difficult one. Like, especially that sort of really guided, curated experience. I just don't want to get into a situation where a machine is doing all the thinking, because I don't think you learn technique. Like, that doesn't teach me how to cook a good egg. There's certain things that you need to know how to cook a good egg. And I think if you're just doing it, following what's on a screen, you're not learning anything. Maybe, I don't know. Anyway.
Well, it's interesting because so many of my friends have taken advantage of the home delivery of pre-cooked meals that you then assemble.
Yeah.
Not just, like the food boxes. These are pre-cooked meals that you assemble in a particular way, and there you have quite a theme, a country theme, or a vegetarian theme, whatever.
Yeah.
And so many of my friends have taken to that, and it's taken them out of their comfort zone. And I just think it's maybe they're missing going out to a restaurant, and they're looking for that different taste palette. But it's interesting, and they love those sort of instructions of, and some of the companies provide a YouTube link so that you can follow it on YouTube. Others provide recipe cards, and they're quite different, and it's interesting.
Yeah, and one part of that conversation is around looking for different flavours and foods and techniques and all the rest of that. So you've never cooked Moroccan, as just an example off the top of my head. So it's probably like that fits the bill to give someone a totally different take on what their dinner might usually be. It's not lamb chops and 3 veg. So I think that covers one part of it. But the other question that I raise is it cooking? Because that, to me, and I did the same thing. I told you that Em and I we got providor. Got really nice all box, but it's not cooking. It's reheating.
Yeah.
So they're reheating instructions, where if you look at something like, there's a million of them around the world, but HelloFresh or whatever, like you start with raw ingredient and you actually have to cook.
Yeah.
Now, does it teach you the whys of what you're doing? Not so much, but you are still starting with raw ingredients and cooking. And unless you actually sit there and think about what it is that you're doing, are you actually learning anything? I don't know. There's a lot of different parts to it, but yeah, it's probably not going to hold me in good stead but I still think good fundamental understanding of technique will go a long way to making you a better cook. But I've said that before.
One of the watchers of readers of Cooking with Steam, Dave, sent an email asking, which I thought was a good question. We've had this a few times. Dave was asking, in our portions, are they for 1, 2, 3 or 4 people? And
I didn't see Dave's email. Sorry, Dave.
Well, I think he came in last night.
Oh, okay.
And so I thought this would be a good one to talk about it, and then I know what to say when I write back to Dave.
Yes.
But Dave, reached out, and I thought that's a good question to ask, because sometimes it is hard to, when you're looking at a recipe, to work out, is that going to feed, how many of us, and how many do I need to scale it up?
So I might use a cake as an example here, because it's probably a good one to figure out volume, because that's what we're talking about here. So if you take a you read recipes, right, for a cake and it says 20 centimetre springform tin, as an example, and you've got 180 grams of butter and 80 grams of sugar and 4 eggs and 150 grams of flour and this much cocoa butter and this much chocolate and all these ingredients, right? If you actually wanted to, and if you didn't have a 20 centimetre cake tin, you had a 25 or 28 centimetre cake tin, would you sit there and go, I can't bake that because I don't have the right tin? Or, alternatively, what you could do is if you actually add up all of those ingredients together to equal a volume, so in grams, so let's say it equaled 587 grams, right? All of those ingredients, they equal 587 grams. If you wanted to, what you could do is measure out 587 grams of water, pour it into your cake tin, see where it comes to, and it'll give you an idea of what sort of volume that you're going to end up with in your cake tin. So if you've got a 28 centimetre cake tin, you're going to have a flatter cake, but will it still work in your cake tin? Yeah, more likely than not. It'll probably cook a little bit quicker because there's more surface area, but if you're ever wondering about volume, best thing to do is add up all the ingredients, even if you just do a rough calculation, like 180, okay, it's about 200. You just do a rough calculation, go, okay, I'm going to end up with 600, 800, 740 grams of mass here. What does that 740 grams of mass look like in the cooking dish that I'm going to be using? Will it fit? Does it work?
Okay.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
But from a yield perspective, I'm pretty sure all the recipes that we do now have got a yield on them.
Yeah. Dave might have been looking at one of the some of the earlier ones, but
and it's very hard to do because the funny thing was when I was a private chef, one of my clients never wanted his food plated up, so he always wanted it on like a buffet type, help yourself. So we would judge, okay, there's 4 guests coming, there's 6 guests coming, and we would generally put out more portions because he didn't want to be dictated to how many portions he could or couldn't have.
Okay.
Right. So yield is hard, especially for things like a braise or a casserole or something like that. A leg of lamb, like how many, like, or even let's say a rack of pork is probably a better example, and I only say that because of Dougie.
A favourite, yes, roast pork, favourite.
An 8-point roast pork rack, generally you would say 1 point per person, but I know if you and Doug came over for dinner, I would allow 2 points for Doug at least because he loves it so much. So it depends on what meal you're using, what time of the day it is, all these sorts of things.
Yeah.
But for our recipes, yield is generally anywhere between 2 and 4, and sometimes if you look at sticky date puddings are probably a good one. That's an extreme one where you're getting up to 10, 12, 14. But of course your recipes can be shrunk.
Not with my friends.
Yeah, I know.
6.
That's it. Yeah, but that's a big pudding for 6
They
people.
love it. Yes.
But yeah, so yield is a hard one to judge because what's the perfect portion?
Well, I tend to look at your recipe if I'm going back through some of the cooking with steam recipes for inspiration, and I tend to look at how many, like the cassoulet. Not that I've made it yet, but it's on my list. But
it's been on your list for
a
couple of years now.
I'm waiting to make it. I know.
Yeah.
Well, it's just there's a lot of food in there.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of food, and there's just Doug and I.
Yeah.
And until we can open up our homes and have people again.
Yeah, but you see that's a really good point, right? So that recipe, if you look at the core ingredients of that recipe, which is speck or bacon, whatever you want to call it, duck leg, Toulouse sausage, and beans, right, and a few other bits and pieces. If you allowed 1 duck leg each and a little bit of Toulouse sausage, there's no reason why you couldn't make that, even though the recipe might say it's for 4. You can always shrink a recipe, and you can always
have leftovers.
Yeah, and you can always increase a recipe, but the question when you do that is what impact does it have on cooking time? Because as soon as you add volume, you change cooking time.
Okay. Yes, we have.
Think about the cake, right? So
yes.
the cake recipe is for a 20 centimetre tin. 20 centimetre tin surface area is much less than a 28 centimetre. A 28 centimetre is going to get a lot more heat onto the surface a lot quicker. It's going to be not as deep as far as the mixture goes. 20 centimetre is going to be much deeper and take a little while longer to cook through and probably stay a little bit more moist. So volume impacts on cook time, but it doesn't impact on what the recipe should do. The recipe is what the recipe is. So 2, 4, 6, 8, whatever. Take the main ingredient and go, okay, if it's a 160 gram portion of salmon or 140 gram portion of salmon, somewhere in there, that's good for one person. 100 gram, 120 to 150 grams of red meat is generally enough.
Yeah, well, that's what I look at.
Yeah.
And so for me, the cassoulet, because I did see when you made it, Dougie and I did eat that, and Dougie did have a fairly healthy portion of it. But it is something that I think is also quite spectacular for putting on the centre table and letting people sort of, take their pick, as you said. But
like, so, the yields of the recipes that's why they're loose. If you look at those sort of complete, more family dish type situation, like beef carbonara as an example, I think that comfortably feeds 6 people. But if I have my mates over, it's probably only going to feed 4 of us.
Yeah.
Depends who you're feeding. You know what I mean? Like, how many roast potatoes is enough?
No, that has never been solved because there's never enough.
Yeah, you see.
There's always a need for more roast potatoes. But I made the beef carbonara one night when we were having a few friends over for one of our birthdays. And I had other dishes as well. And so that fed about 20 because we all had a little bit, which was lovely.
But if you serve your carbonara,
but
if you serve your carbonara with mash or polenta or something heavy and filling as well, you don't need as much. You need 80, 90 grams versus 120, 130.
You haven't really eaten with my friends, have you?
Yeah, I know. But
well,
generally, the volumes that I do it for cooking with steam are generally too big anyway. Like for what I would do in, let's say, if I was working in a restaurant. But look, it's hard. It depends who you're feeding, how many people you're feeding. If you're trying to stretch it as well, what's a 1.4 kilo roast chicken? Is that enough for 4?
No. It could be if they're young and there's other things with it.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So I don't think we've really answered Dave's question.
Because it's almost impossible.
Okay, well, Dave, I'll try putting it in an email to you later.
Just listen to the podcast, though. Should just send you a long-winded email. It doesn't make any sense and has no solution at the end.
That's right. That's like most of my emails, Paul. Why would Dave's be any different?
Poor Dave.
And what have you been cooking at home lately?
What have I been cooking? I did a nice, speaking of roast chicken, I did a nice roast chicken last night. Because we've been over the little fellow, we've done a bit of baking, a few muffins. Nothing particularly exciting. Octopus.
Okay.
I've been trying to get different fish and stuff because we're so close to the market. So a few different fish. We've done a lot of whole fish, and just that's now a family meal. We've changed our family routine now, so we all sit down at grandma time when it's still daylight and eat, which is not my favourite thing, but anyway. But a lot of whole fish, a lot of fish on the barbecue. Done.
Oh, nice.
But always something different, because my little fella likes flathead and would eat flathead every day of the week if he could, but he likes to see the skeleton of the fish and why you cook it with its head on, and he likes the ins and outs and all the why its eyes like that, and it's interesting to him. So
great.
Yeah. Certainly a lot of whole fish, a lot of secondary cuts, but now we're getting out of the cooler months. Sorry. Less braises and things like that. So
you're coming up into our summer.
Yeah.
Soon, so it'll be completely different again.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we'll be able to share tables.
Coronavirus. Damn.
I was going to say, is that a corona cough?
No, not
No.
quite. So yeah, that's about it really. But we'll get back into cooking with steam action this week. Get some videos done. If anyone wants to know anything or looking for some inspiration.
And moving along with book 2.
Yeah, we've been talking about that for a while. We're going to stop talking about it.
No, it's moving along. It's just slow.
Yeah.
But we are moving along with book 2.
Yeah.
And which will be coming out soon, we hope. I've just got to keep chugging away at it. Everything slows down in COVID time.
Yeah, it just makes it much more difficult.
Everything takes longer. It's just harder to reach people. It's harder to get things done.
Yeah.
But we're coming out of it, and the world seems to be working out how to live with it, which is great. Most of the world, anyway.
Yep.
Well, it is good to see you,
And you.
happy cooking, and we will be in touch. And to all of our listeners, stay well, stay safe.
Stay safe.
And stay sane.
Get
Happy
vaccinated.
cooking.
Get vaccinated.
Yes. And happy cooking, guys. Bye.
Happy cooking.
Thanks for listening to this podcast as we explore home cooking in a modern world. We'd love you to subscribe, and for more information, please go to our website, cookingwithsteam.com.